They said first class isn't for you. Then she bought the entire airline on the spot. She approached the check-in counter with a heart full of excitement, a first-class ticket tucked carefully in her hand. All around her, John F. Kennedy International Airport bustled with impatient travelers and echoing announcements. Children rushed past, dragging colorful suitcases on wheels, while business executives in tailored suits scrolled through emails on their phones. In the midst of the throng, she stood with a quiet confidence, ready to indulge in the luxury she'd worked so hard to afford. But before she could hand over her ticket, a dismissive voice cut through the noise. "First class isn't for you." Little did they know how drastically the tables would soon turn. In the early morning light at JFK, the sky was tinged pink as dawn stretched over New York City's iconic skyline. The airport interior was alive with a constant hum, flight announcements, the rolling thud of suitcases over tiles, the sizzling hiss of espresso machines in nearby coffee kiosks. Some travelers were bleary-eyed, still yawning from a short night's rest, while others were bright with anticipation for upcoming adventures. Tucked into this tapestry of movement and urgency was Cassandra Dupree, a poised black woman in her early 30s, about to embark on what should have been a seamless journey from New York to Los Angeles. Cassandra was no stranger to airports. Her branding consultancy work took her across the country, sometimes internationally. But this morning she was particularly excited because she had treated herself to a first-class ticket on American Airlines Flight 472. The impetus for the splurge was the imminent signing of her largest ever contract with a tech startup in LA. She had grown accustomed to the frugal practicality of economy class, especially in her early career when every penny had to be pinched to keep her fledgling business alive. Now, she was ready to savor the comfort and prestige she'd worked so hard to earn. As Cassandra stepped up to the American Airlines priority check-in, a blonde gate agent behind the counter gave her a cursory glance, then turned back to the computer screen. The agent's polished demeanor exuded routine efficiency, but there was a subtle undertone, an almost reflexive skepticism. Cassandra handed over her ticket and ID, offering a polite smile. "I'm here for flight 472 seat 2A, she said, voice brimming with the satisfaction of having secured a front row spot. The agent's expression soured slightly as she tapped on her keyboard. "It says here you're booked in seat 31EE economy." A spike of confusion cut through Cassandra's excitement. "That must be a mistake," she replied, pulling up her digital confirmation. "I purchased first class, specifically seat 2A. The agent shrugged without so much as glancing at Cassandra's phone. "The system shows 31E. If that's not acceptable, you can rebook, but the rest of first class is sold out." Steeling herself, Cassandra spoke calmly. "I have a valid first-class ticket. Could you please verify the passenger manifest or check if there's been an error?" The agent's gaze fell on Cassandra's face, then flicked to her suit, simple but finely tailored. Despite Cassandra's measured tone, the agent let out a soft snort of derision. "Ma'am, first class isn't for everyone. Our records show you're in economy, so I suggest you proceed there or contact customer service later." Those words resonated in Cassandra's mind like a hammer blow. She had heard similar coded phrases, most of her life subtle jabs, implying she couldn't possibly belong in the realm of business class, private clubs, or high-end experiences. It was yet another reminder of how people often equated one's outward appearance with their wealth or worth. Typically, she brushed these microaggressions aside. But something about this moment, how she had scrimped and saved to enjoy this particular splendor, pushed her to respond decisively. "Call your supervisor, please," she said, managing a veneer of calm. Her heart pounded against her ribs as the agent cast her a tight-lipped glare and huffed into a phone. Passengers behind her in line fidgeted, some openly curious, others annoyed at the hold-up. Cassandra thought she caught the faint titter of a businessman behind her, as though amused by the tension. A supervisor soon arrived, a short, harried woman sporting an American Airlines badge. She listened to Cassandra's explanation, tapped her own tablet for a moment, then politely shrugged. Unfortunately, Seat 2A has been reassigned, likely due to a system glitch or an overbooking scenario. It doesn't appear we have any available seats in first class now. Cassandra pressed her lips together. I booked that seat weeks ago. I have the receipt and confirmation. Surely there's a way to resolve this without bumping me to economy. The supervisor shook her head. The flight is fully booked. If you want to fly today, you'll have to accept the economy seat. We can provide you with a future upgrade voucher. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Though her cheeks burned, Cassandra recognized the script, a bland apology, a low-level offer of appeasement, and no real accountability for the slight. She could sense the undertone, take it or leave it, the system glitch overshadowing any notion of her rightful place in 2A. She felt her fury rising, but she reined it in. Yelling or causing a public scene would do little to fix this. Instead, she gathered her belongings, stepped away from the counter, and called her business partner, Jonathan Reese, who was already in Los Angeles finalizing details for their upcoming contract. They're refusing to honor my first-class ticket, she said, trying to keep her voice steady as she walked to a quieter part of the terminal. You have a right to be upset, Jonathan replied. Is it a glitch or discrimination? You've got the receipts, literally. Cassandra sighed. They're claiming it's an innocent system error, but the attitude from the agent was blatant. I'm not letting this slide. Not this time. Jonathan's tone softened. What's your plan? Cassandra inhaled, recalling a remark once made by Harold, her mentor, a retired hedge fund manager who had invested in various large corporations, including airlines. I'm calling in some favors, she said, and I'm not flying economy on a ticket I paid first-class money for. In fact, I'm not flying with them at all today. She hung up, adrenaline igniting her thoughts. Every slight she'd ever experienced, 1,000 small moments of doubt cast by others, coalesced in that instant. She wasn't just fighting for Seat 2A, she was fighting to dismantle the entrenched notion that certain spaces were off-limits to people who looked like her. Today would be the day she acted on an idea she'd only toyed with in passing. She would challenge the entire power structure behind this dismissive system. Cassandra had never been someone who tolerated defeat lightly. She strode away from the American Airlines counter, found a quiet alcove near a Hudson newsstand, and began making calls. First, she arranged a last-minute private jet charter, an extravagance, but she had no time to scramble for another commercial flight. She needed to be in LA that very afternoon. Next, she reached out to Harold, who picked up on the second ring. "Cassandra, my star protégé," he greeted, his voice tinged with curiosity. "I wasn't expecting a call at this hour. Everything all right?" She explained the fiasco, each detail dripping with frustration. "It's not the first time," she added, "but I'm determined it will be the last. Remind me, you once mentioned you still have connections to American Airlines board, right?" Harold whistled softly. "You're not planning a lawsuit, are you?" "No," Cassandra answered, her voice dropping low with resolved intensity. "I want to buy into the airline controlling interest if possible." A pause. That's enormous, Cassandra. Even with your success, we're talking about billions to control a major airline. "I'm fully aware," she said, scanning the terminal. Families bustled past. The overhead speakers announced boarding calls she would no longer heed. "I'm about to close my biggest deal, which will free up substantial capital. Beyond that, I have contacts with venture capitalists and institutional investors who trust my leadership. If I can gather a strong enough consortium, we could make a serious bid." Another silence, heavy with consideration. "All right," Harold replied. "It's bold, possibly insane, but I'm here to help." Buying controlling interest in an airline is a labyrinth: regulatory approvals, union negotiations, massive due diligence. You need a cohesive plan, not just anger. Cassandra's jaw tightened. "I have more than anger. I have a vision: rebrand the airline, transform customer service, and create a space that truly welcomes everyone. No more condescending nonsense at the gate." Harold exhaled. "Then, let's talk strategy. Give me a day or two to set up calls with some of my old contacts who still hold significant shares. We'll see if they're interested in something new." "Thank you," Cassandra said. She ended the call, a knot of determination in her chest. She would funnel her anger into action. Let them sneer and claim first class isn't for you. She would claim not just a seat, but the entire operation. As Cassandra made her way out of JFK to hail a cab to the private airstrip, she couldn't help recalling the countless times she'd had to fight to be taken seriously. Growing up in a tight-knit neighborhood on the outskirts of Baltimore, she was the daughter of a middle school teacher and a modest construction worker. Their world was anything but lavish. Her parents often worked overtime, crossing their fingers each month that bills wouldn't exceed income. Yet from an early age, Cassandra showed signs of fierce determination. She helped her mother with rummage sales, meticulously tagging items to ensure they sold at the best possible price. She organized neighborhood bake sales and discovered that, with a little marketing flair, even day-old pastries could attract customers. In the living room, she would rearrange the furniture to mimic office desks, scribbling notes on imaginary deals in a notepad. By the time she was 10, she'd begun reading the Wall Street Journal in the library, fascinated by the numbers and trends she only half understood. Her parents poured love and encouragement into her budding dreams. They told her that no matter where she started, she could end up anywhere she set her sights on, as long as she blended grit with strategy. She held onto that mantra through high school, where she excelled academically, despite being one of the few students of color in her advanced classes. Teachers occasionally assumed she was in the wrong room or asked if she needed extra help before even seeing her work. She responded by acing tests and volunteering for leadership roles. She refused to let anyone's preconceptions define her trajectory. Despite scholarships, Cassandra found college financially daunting. She took on multiple part-time jobs, tutoring fellow students, working as a research assistant, and even managing weekend shifts at a hotel front desk. She grew adept at budgeting her time down to the minute. While others partied, she spent late nights refining her business pitches or reading about emerging markets. Every piece of data felt like a stepping stone to her bigger ambitions. In her junior year, she secured a coveted internship at a Fortune 500 company. That was where she first tasted corporate politics, how people with lesser skills but better connections often climbed faster, how closed-door decisions could favor those who fit a certain mold. She learned to navigate these hidden currents by forging strategic alliances and distinguishing herself through consistent, impeccable work. The few mentors who recognized her talent championed her rise. By graduation, she had job offers from several prestigious firms. She chose an elite consulting company, excelled, then risked it all to start her own branding consultancy. There were months she lived on instant noodles, landing only sporadic freelance projects. But eventually, her ability to elevate small tech companies into polished, marketable brands gained traction. Larger clients came calling, her bank balance crept upward. She hired staff, talented individuals from diverse backgrounds, determined to provide opportunities for those who, like her, had faced a million small barriers. Over time, she became known in certain circles as the unstoppable force who could repackage even the most obscure product into a runaway success. Yet no matter how high she climbed, she never escaped the subtle question marks around her presence in upscale spaces like that first-class line. It wasn't just about one seat on one flight. It was a symptom of a society that still struggled to acknowledge that excellence could come from anyone, anywhere. Now, as she headed toward her makeshift flight to Los Angeles, she realized something electrifying. She was in a position to challenge the root system behind these biases on a much larger scale. It took Cassandra 30 additional minutes to reach a smaller airfield in White Plains, where a sleek jet awaited her. The plane's owner, a colleague in the tech world, had graciously offered it upon hearing Cassandra's predicament. As she settled into the plush leather seat, she reflected on the irony. She'd been denied her paid first-class ticket only to end up on a private jet. Life, it seemed, had a knack for comedic timing. Once airborne, she flipped open her laptop. She began drafting emails to potential allies, scouring her list of venture capitalists and philanthropic funds she had worked with in previous branding projects. She typed out a succinct pitch, highlighting the potential for a strategic rebranding of American Airlines, the existing market share and route network, and how improved customer experience could yield exponential returns. In a separate folder, she started enumerating ways to integrate new aviation technologies, from more fuel-efficient planes to streamlined booking systems. Her mind buzzed with possibility. She pictured an airline culture that celebrated difference rather than scorned it. Flight attendants from an array of backgrounds, ticket agents trained to treat each passenger with genuine respect, upgraded seats in all cabins so that every traveler, not just the wealthiest, felt valued. It wasn't just a dream about eradicating prejudice. It was a business plan that could catapult American Airlines to new heights. If she positioned her pitch correctly, she could rally enough funding to outmaneuver existing shareholders who might be resistant to a leadership shakeup. The flight landed in Los Angeles under a sun-soaked sky. Cassandra stepped onto the tarmac, her phone vibrating incessantly with text messages and voicemails. Jonathan was the first person she called. "I'm here," she said, "ready to finalize our deal with Helios Systems." Jonathan's relief was palpable. "Great. They've been asking about you. Any updates on the airline front?" Cassandra paused, taking in the swirl of activity around the private jet. "Harold is on board. He's gathering key stakeholders who might sell their shares. I'll dig into details once our Helios meeting is done. This is going to be massive, Jonathan, but I have a feeling we can pull it off." Helios Systems was an emerging tech unicorn specializing in cutting-edge solar panel technology that promised unprecedented efficiency. They needed a branding overhaul, and they wanted Cassandra's firm to do it. The contract was valued at an astronomical figure, enough to double her company's annual revenue. For weeks, she'd been working with Helios executives on the final negotiations, ensuring the scope of work matched the hefty price tag. Securing that contract would not only buoy her firm, but also inject a large amount of liquid capital that she could leverage for the upcoming airline bid. That afternoon, Cassandra arrived at the Helios Systems headquarters in downtown Los Angeles. The modernist high-rise soared above the bustling streets. Its expansive windows reflected the bright California sun, as though capturing the very essence of solar innovation. Cassandra felt that familiar blend of nerves and excitement, the same rush she'd felt when she pitched her first big client years ago. Inside, the conference room was all glass walls and minimalist decor. Jonathan waited, along with 3 Helios executives, 2 men in sharp suits and a woman with a severe bob haircut who introduced herself as the CFO. They exchanged pleasantries, and then it was down to business. For the better part of 2 hours, They hashed out contract minutiae, project timelines, deliverables, marketing budgets, partnership alignments with other eco-friendly brands. Cassandra displayed her usual unflappable professionalism, drawing upon a meticulously organized deck that showcased her firm's proven record of brand turnarounds. Every so often, she slipped in nuanced references to the synergy between Helios's progressive ethos and her own mission to elevate consumer perception, a subtle nod to how much she valued innovation and inclusivity. In the final moments, the CFO cleared her throat. "We love your vision, Cassandra. We just need assurances that your team can handle a project of this scale without sacrificing attention to detail. Helios's brand must be launched perfectly." Cassandra nodded, leaning forward. "That's precisely why we're taking a collaborative approach. We have specialized teams ready to tackle everything from consumer outreach to advanced digital marketing. You'll have full transparency with weekly updates, and will incorporate real-time analytics to gauge effectiveness at each stage. By the time we officially unveil Helios's new identity, the data and public sentiment will speak for themselves." The CFO exchanged a glance with the other executives. Then she slid a folder across the table. "Let's finalize this. Sign here, here, and here." Cassandra's heart thudded as she picked up the pen. She carefully signed, each stroke of the ink reminding her of how far she had come from that single-room office with a shaky Wi-Fi connection. The men and women in the room broke into smiles. Handshakes were exchanged. A wave of applause rippled through the small group. Jonathan grinned broadly. "Congratulations to all of us. This is the beginning of something huge." As Cassandra gathered her folders, she felt a surge of energy. This contract was her golden ticket, both literally and metaphorically. With the capital that would flow from this partnership, she could take bigger risks. Now the next phase beckoned. The airline, an entire swirl of phone calls, negotiations, and strategic planning lay before her. Back at her hotel suite that evening, Cassandra settled at a desk overlooking Los Angeles' twinkling lights. She brewed a cup of tea, opened her laptop, and called Harold. His tone was upbeat. "Good timing, I've got some leads for you." She listened attentively as Harold detailed potential investors. A hedge fund manager disgruntled by American Airlines' stagnating stock prices, a philanthropic fund that championed diversity, a couple of mid-level shareholders tired of minimal returns. "They're not all guaranteed to sell or join forces," Harold cautioned, "but they're open to hearing new propositions. With your Helios contract in the bag, your pitch gets stronger because you can personally commit substantial capital as well." Cassandra's hands flew over the keyboard, taking notes. "I'll set up meetings ASAP," she replied. "I also want to approach some philanthropic organizations who might see this as a chance to usher in more equitable workplaces in a high-profile industry. If we package it right, it's an ethical and financial win." They discussed timelines, possible regulatory hurdles, and how to handle union negotiations if Cassandra's consortium succeeded in acquiring controlling shares. Before ending the call, Cassandra asked, "And the board members at American Airlines, will they even entertain this kind of bid from an upstart, especially a woman of color?" Harold's voice was cautious but encouraging. "They'll have to, if the numbers make sense. The board's duty is to maximize shareholder value. If you can align enough shareholders behind your proposal, the board won't have much choice. You'll need an ironclad plan, though. Include synergy projections, cultural rebranding strategies, and a budget for workforce improvements. Show them you're not just venting from a bad experience, you're offering a blueprint to elevate their entire enterprise." Cassandra felt her shoulders relax. She had a direction, a path forward. That night, she barely slept. Her mind buzzed with bullet points for presentations, spreadsheets of potential finances, and images of a new era in air travel. In the background of her thoughts, she kept hearing that dismissive phrase, "First class isn't for you." She would convert that hostility into a clarion call that proved she and anyone else willing to work for it could belong at the highest altitudes. Days turned into weeks of feverish activity. Cassandra flew to New York, then Dallas, then San Francisco, courting high-net-worth individuals and institutional funds. She pitched them on the same pillars, a reimagined airline that prioritized customer service, inclusive culture, and modern alliances with eco-friendly aviation tech. She argued that an energized workforce would translate into higher customer satisfaction, thus higher ticket sales and improved brand loyalty. The philanthropic angle caught many off guard. Some found it refreshing that a potential owner cared about more than profit margins. Others expressed skepticism, worried it was all too idealistic. In a conference room in downtown Manhattan, Cassandra made a detailed presentation to an investment group led by a man named Felix Ramirez, known for capital injections into industries he believed were on the brink of transformation. He listened with rapt attention, occasionally consulting a thick binder of airline financials. When Cassandra concluded, he tapped his pen thoughtfully on the table. "I see the potential," Felix said. "But turning around an airline's culture is monumental. You're proposing a company-wide re-education, from ground staff to executives. That alone could cost millions." Cassandra nodded. "Yes, but consider the payoff. A single viral incident of poor customer treatment can decimate brand value. Conversely, a brand known for exceptional care can charge a premium. Plus, we can streamline operations, better use of data analytics, partnerships with strategic tech providers. These can reduce overhead in the long run." Felix tapped his pen a final time. "Count me in for a preliminary investment. I'll need more details on the capital structure, but I'm intrigued." Cassandra exhaled, relief flooding her. Every small step, every partial agreement was a rung on the ladder. As she left the building, she couldn't help smiling at the Manhattan skyline. The city that once felt so intimidating was now a stage where she maneuvered deals worth billions. She called Harold immediately to share the good news. "We're gathering steam," she told him. "If these commitments hold, we might be able to finalize an offer soon." As the momentum built, word spread through financial circles that Cassandra was gunning for controlling interest in American Airlines. This created chatter among other investors, some curious, some threatened. Eventually, it drew the attention of Clayton Rice, a Texas billionaire notorious for buying companies cheaply, gutting them for short-term profit, and discarding the remains. One afternoon, Harold called Cassandra with urgency in his voice. "We've got a problem. Rice is making noise about acquiring a bigger stake in American Airlines. He's been buying up shares over the past few weeks. He has enough influence to challenge your bid." Cassandra listened, mind churning. She knew Rice by reputation, brash, confrontational, with a track record of cost-slashing that left workforces demoralized. If he succeeded, all her grand plans for a more equitable airline would be squashed under his typical profit-over-people approach. "What's his angle?" she asked, pacing her office in New York. "Money," Harold answered with a humorless laugh. "He sees the airline's depressed stock price and believes he can flip it for a substantial return. But now that you're making waves, I suspect he wants to beat you just to prove he's the bigger fish. People like Rice don't like being upstaged." Cassandra's pulse quickened. She felt a flicker of anxiety. "We can't let him strong-arm the board into accepting a quick deal," she said. "We need to finalize our offer and get shareholders to commit to us before Rice can overshadow us with an inflated bid. We have to show them with a long-term solution, not a butcher's knife." The next days were a frenzy of phone calls and negotiations. Cassandra's consortium worked to secure locked-in sale agreements, preventing Rice from swaying those shareholders with bigger payouts. She also ramped up her pitch to the press, interviews with business magazines, op-eds about the importance of inclusive corporate cultures. While she couldn't say outright she was vying for the airline, her subtle references to the future of air travel and transformational leadership made headlines that sent Rice into a visible tailspin. Before long, the board at American Airlines realized they had two very different suitors in the wings. A rumor leaked that the board would hold a special meeting to weigh formal proposals. Cassandra's heart hammered when she read the news. The showdown was imminent. Amid the looming confrontation, Cassandra flew once more to Dallas, where American Airlines kept a significant corporate presence. Harold arranged a private sit-down with a board member known to be receptive to fresh ideas. They met in an upscale restaurant with dim lighting and hush-toned waiters. Cassandra wore a simple black dress, her hair pinned back in an elegant twist, exuding the composed confidence she was known for. The board member, an older woman named Anita Glendale, greeted Cassandra warmly, ordering a glass of Pinot Noir while Cassandra opted for sparkling water. Once they settled into a quiet corner booth, Anita leaned in. "I've read your outline, Miss Dupree. It's impressive. But the board is wary of big promises, especially if they require overhauling our entire staff culture." Cassandra folded her hands on the table. "I understand the apprehension. I won't pretend it's easy, but your current brand is stagnating. Over the past 2 years, your complaints ratio has surged, your flight attendants are overworked, and high-profile PR incidents are driving some loyal customers to other carriers. If we continue down this path, the airline's future is precarious." Anita sipped her wine thoughtfully. Reese promises a lean approach, trimming the fat to maximize returns. Some on the board are intrigued by the immediate profit that might bring. Short-term, perhaps, Cassandra allowed, but that approach undermines employee morale. You'd see an exodus of skilled staff, and the brand's public image would worsen. My plan invests in people. It's not just an altruistic pitch, it's an economic imperative. A satisfied, motivated workforce leads to better customer experiences, which in turn boosts long-term revenue and stock value. They spoke for nearly 2 hours, dissecting everything from supply chain inefficiencies to the complexities of union negotiations. Anita asked pointed questions about labor disputes, pilot retention, and capital outlays for new pilot training programs. Cassandra answered each query with data-laden strategies, careful to highlight how improved relationships with the workforce could prevent future strikes or walkouts. Finally, Anita nodded, setting her wine glass down. "I like what I'm hearing," she said. "I can't promise the entire board will align with me, but you're not just venting about a bad experience, are you? You've done your homework." Cassandra felt a mix of relief and determination. "Thank you for giving me the chance to share my vision. If the board truly wants what's best for American Airlines, I believe they'll see the potential in a more holistic transformation." As they parted ways outside the restaurant, the warm Dallas evening air pressed around them. Cassandra shook Anita's hand, noticing a flicker of genuine respect in the older woman's eyes. Another obstacle approached, but Cassandra sensed she was gathering key allies. Not everything proceeded smoothly. As her profile rose, Cassandra found herself hounded by the media. Some praised her as a fearless entrepreneur, others labeled her presumptuous, questioning whether she had the experience to handle such a massive enterprise. Business commentators on TV debated her merits daily. One pundit sneered that she was out of her depth, suggesting she was driven by an emotional vendetta rather than a sound business rationale. These narratives took a toll. Late at night, in her hotel rooms or her New York apartment, Cassandra wrestled with self-doubt. The memory of that humiliating exchange at JFK remained a raw nerve. She knew it was partially fueling her quest But she also believed her push was grounded in solid economics and ethics. She worried whether she might be sacrificing her personal life, her relationships, even her mental health, for a battle that could end in heartbreak if the board sided with Rice. Her father called one evening, voice filled with paternal concern. "Baby, I see you on TV every other day now. You're working so hard. You've come so far. Just promise me you'll keep your happiness in mind." Cassandra felt tears prick her eyes. "I will, Dad," she answered softly. "I promise. But this is bigger than me. If I succeed, I can open doors for so many people, show them that no dream is too big." He sighed, but there was pride in his tone. "I know. Keep fighting, but remember, you're allowed to rest. You don't have to carry the whole world alone." The conversation lingered in her mind. She carved out small pockets of time to see her partner, Marcus, a software engineer who had been supportive but felt neglected as her schedule grew more frenzied. He tried to lighten her load by cooking dinners, massaging her shoulders when she appeared exhausted, but the tension in the air was unavoidable. Cassandra assured him that it was temporary, that once the airline situation resolved, she would recalibrate. Yet each day the demands grew. Things reached a critical juncture when Clayton Rice publicly announced his intention to purchase a controlling stake. He appeared on a major financial news program, wearing a cowboy hat and a smug grin. "American Airlines needs a fella who knows how to run a tight ship," he drawled. "We'll whip it into shape, cut wasteful spending, and get it back to profitability in no time. This pie-in-the-sky, rebranding nonsense is for amateurs." Cassandra watched the broadcast from her office, her stomach churning. She recognized Rice's bravado as a last-ditch effort to sway undecided shareholders who might be lured by the promise of instant profits. If she didn't respond effectively, the tide could shift away from her carefully built coalition. She decided to take her own message to the public sphere. On a different business news show, she calmly outlined her proposed strategies for American Airlines, emphasizing that while there were always ways to operate more efficiently, slashing staff or ignoring consumer sentiment was ultimately a route to brand decay. Her voice rang with conviction as she stated, "We're not just chasing short-term gains. We're establishing an airline that can grow sustainably and remain competitive for decades." The contrast between her measured professionalism and Rice's combative showmanship was stark. Journalists and analysts began drawing clear lines. Rice represented old guard corporate raiding, while Cassandra embodied a new wave of socially conscious yet profit-savvy leadership. Time seemed to compress as the date of the special board meeting approached. Cassandra was officially invited to present her final offer. Rice would do the same. Shareholders representing a majority of voting power would be present or dial in by proxy. The stakes could not have been higher. On the morning of the meeting, Cassandra, dressed in a white blazer and matching slacks and ensemble that radiated both confidence and approachability. She arrived at a gleaming skyscraper in Dallas, where security guards were carefully checking IDs. Crowds of reporters jammed the sidewalks outside, cameras flashing. She acknowledged their presence with a polite wave, but refused to make a statement, focusing on the momentous hours ahead. Inside, a grand auditorium awaited, large enough to hold hundreds of shareholders and the entire board. In the front row sat the board members, including Anita Glendale, who nodded reassuringly at Cassandra. On the opposite side, Rice lounged, flanked by his lawyers, exuding brash confidence. The tension in the air was palpable. One by one, presentations were made. Rice went first. He kept his speech short, hammering home themes of lean operations and eliminating inefficiencies. He threw in a dig at Cassandra's consortium, calling it unproven and unrealistic, while promising his plan would restore American Airlines to its rightful place as an industry giant. When it was her turn, Cassandra stepped to the podium, the overhead lights warming her face. She steadied her breath and began, "Distinguished members of the board, shareholders, and guests. I stand before you not simply as a challenger, but as someone who believes American Airlines can soar higher than ever if we champion innovation, respect the people who power these flights, and serve our customers with integrity." She then launched into a meticulously crafted slideshow. It showcased how an overhaul in customer service training, strategic partnerships with eco-friendly aviation technology firms, and a revamped loyalty program could yield a rise in passenger satisfaction and a stronger bottom line. Graphs illustrated the correlation between employee satisfaction and stock performance. Demographic data revealed untapped markets for expansions and code-sharing partnerships. Occasionally, she would glimpse Rice rolling his eyes, but she pressed on, her voice never wavered. She ended with an impassioned statement: "This isn't about me, this is about all of us." Travel is one of the most unifying experiences in the world, bringing cultures and families together. American Airlines can lead this new era by valuing every passenger, every employee, and every opportunity for advancement. It requires more than cutting corners. It requires vision. A hush fell over the auditorium. Then applause rippled through the audience, some standing to clap. Cassandra kept her composure, though her heart pounded with hope. She returned to her seat, ignoring Rice's sardonic smirk. Shareholders had been given instructions on how to cast their votes, either through secure devices on site or via proxies. A large digital board at the front of the auditorium would display the results. For nearly an hour, the process played out. Tension thickened as watchers occasionally gasped at the voting patterns shifting in real time. At first, Rice gained a slight lead. His promises of immediate profitability likely appealed to more traditional investors. Cassandra felt her stomach tighten. She clasped her hands in her lap, forcing herself to stay calm. Then, as the next wave of votes was tallied, her numbers shot up. A portion of the larger funds she had courted began to weigh in heavily on her side. The tug-of-war continued, back and forth, until the final results froze. Cassandra's consortium, 53.4%, Rice, 46.6%. She blinked, barely processing what she saw. The auditorium erupted into a cacophony of cheers, murmurs, and exclamations. Rice shot up from his seat, face red with anger, muttering curses to his lawyers. Anita Glendale was beaming, and other board members looked either relieved or stunned. Cassandra rose from her seat, nearly trembling. Cameras flashed. A swirl of reporters pressed forward as she was guided to a podium. She cleared her throat, voice thick with emotion. "I'm humbled by the trust the shareholders have placed in our vision," she said, scanning the crowd. "This is a responsibility I take seriously. Together, we will usher in a new chapter for American Airlines, one defined by excellence, inclusivity, and sustainable growth." Thunderous applause followed. She spotted a few teary-eyed employees in the crowd, some wearing airline badges, looking at her with gratitude and hope. In that moment, Cassandra felt a flood of vindication. She hadn't just won a corporate deal. She had taken a stand for everyone who had ever been told they didn't belong in the front row or the boardroom. Newspapers and business channels exploded with the news. Cassandra Dupree's consortium to acquire controlling interest in American Airlines. While some critics still sniped that she was a novice in aviation, many lauded her victory as a watershed moment for women of color in business leadership. Rice, having lost the vote, tried to challenge the outcome but ultimately retreated when the board ratified Cassandra's offer, signing binding agreements over the following weeks. Behind the scenes, Cassandra worked tirelessly to finalize financing. Her Helios Systems windfall and the commitments from various investors formed the backbone of the consortium. Regulatory agencies needed to approve the transaction, pilot and flight attendant unions needed assurance that she wouldn't usher in layoffs, and the airline's existing debt structure had to be refinanced. It was a labyrinth of paperwork and negotiations, but with each step, Cassandra's position solidified. Meanwhile, Rice faced his own crisis. Rumors swirled of an SEC investigation into questionable dealings. His empire, once unassailable, teetered. Some called it poetic justice. Cassandra didn't revel publicly in his downfall, but privately she noted the stark contrast between building for the future and cutting corners for personal gain. A month after the shareholders' vote, Cassandra was appointed executive chair of the board. Her first major initiative, a sweeping overhaul of customer service training. She commissioned new, in-depth programs that emphasized empathy, cultural awareness, and de-escalation tactics. Simultaneously, she launched a scholarship program for aspiring pilots from underrepresented communities, forging partnerships with flight schools to diversify the cockpit pipeline. Internally, she replaced a few top executives who resisted her vision, bringing in fresh leadership with proven track records of championing employee engagement. She visited major hubs, Dallas, Fort Worth, Charlotte, Miami, holding town halls where employees could voice concerns. Though some remained wary of drastic change, many were hopeful that a more supportive corporate culture would revitalize morale. Externally, Cassandra promoted alliances with eco-friendly aviation startups, looking toward next-generation aircraft that could reduce emissions and operational costs. She championed modern tech solutions to streamline booking and reduce check-in queues. These measures became part of a comprehensive rebranding effort that reminded the public American Airlines was embracing a new, inclusive future. Stocks, which had wavered nervously during the takeover drama, stabilized and then began a slow, steady climb. Customer surveys reported incremental satisfaction increases. While complete transformation would take time, the early indicators suggested her approach held promise. It was nearly a year later when Cassandra found herself once more at JFK, heading to London for a crucial international conference. In many ways, it felt surreal to be back where her fateful confrontation had taken place, where a single dismissive statement had sparked a revolution in her life. She walked into the priority check-in area, noticing new training posters on the walls, part of the airline's updated approach to staff development. A smiling agent waved her forward. Cassandra presented her ID, and the agent typed quickly, then beamed. "Miss Dupree, welcome back to American Airlines. I see you're in our new flagship first-class suite today. Let me confirm everything's in order." Cassandra felt a wave of relief and pride. "Thank you," she said softly. She gazed around, recalling that day when an agent had scowled at her, practically accusing her of lying about her ticket. Now, employees recognized her not only as the controlling shareholder, but as the driving force behind the airline's cultural shift. Yet she remained humble, remembering how humiliating it had once felt to be dismissed at this very counter. As she collected her boarding pass, she noticed, out of the corner of her eye, a blonde woman helping another passenger a few stations away. It was the same gate agent from that pivotal day. Their eyes met briefly. The woman looked anxious, perhaps unsure whether Cassandra bore a grudge. Cassandra offered a faint smile and a polite nod. She had no desire for vengeance. The best revenge was transformation of the airline, of herself, of the entire narrative around who belonged in first class. Minutes later, she was escorted to seat 1A, the newly redesigned first-class seat that offered extra privacy, ergonomic seating, and advanced in-flight entertainment. As the plane taxied down the runway, she leaned back, reflecting on the improbable sequence of events. She had turned a microaggression into a catalyst for sweeping change, built alliances, stared down a billionaire competitor, and emerged as one of the airline industry's most compelling new leaders. If that wasn't proof that determination and grit could shatter ceilings, she didn't know what was. Over the following months, Cassandra's imprint on American Airlines deepened. The airline adopted new community outreach programs, forging relationships with youth organizations to promote careers in aviation. Flight attendants reported higher job satisfaction, while newly redesigned lounges and cabins wooed back travelers who'd defected to competitor airlines. It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were hiccups with union negotiations, a few vocal critics among old guard managers, and the inevitable delays or cancellations that plague any large carrier. Yet overall, the airline's trajectory was on the upswing. In a public ceremony, Cassandra's leadership was recognized when the airline won an industry award for Most Improved Customer Service. She accepted the plaque alongside a diverse group of employees. Cameras flashed. Reporters asked how she felt being a trailblazer, especially as a black woman in a sector still dominated by men. Cassandra responded graciously, attributing the win to the collective effort of everyone at the airline. In a more private moment, she traveled to her hometown in Baltimore to visit her parents. They greeted her with laughter and tears of pride. Her mother insisted on cooking a celebratory meal, fussing over the table while Cassandra's father asked her a dozen questions about the details of running such a large corporation. In the modest living room where she'd grown up, Cassandra felt the magnitude of her achievements settle in. She had proven to herself and the world that no door was permanently barred if one was willing to knock loudly and persistently until it opened. As time went on, Cassandra pushed further improvements. She advocated for sustainable aviation fuels, forging pilot projects with alternative energy suppliers. She launched digital upgrades to streamline seat selection, baggage tracking, and real-time updates for passengers. Every success reaffirmed her belief that a robust bottom line and compassionate corporate values weren't mutually exclusive. Investors watched in amazement as the airline's stock value rose. Annual profits surpassed expectations, with analysts citing the renewed brand identity as a key factor. Cassandra's name became synonymous with forward-thinking leadership, earning her speaking invitations at global conferences. She used these platforms to champion the concept that corporate elites shouldn't be the only ones to experience courtesy and comfort, that any paying passenger had the right to be treated with dignity. In an interview with a major newspaper, she said, "This journey began because someone doubted I could sit in a first-class seat. It made me realize how often we're told to settle for less, especially if we come from marginalized backgrounds. I want to change that narrative, both in the sky and on the ground." Despite her outward success, Cassandra also faced moments of reckoning. She'd become a public figure, and with that status came a loss of privacy. Critics scrutinized her every move, from her wardrobe choices to her personal relationships. She learned to fortify her mental well-being, seeking therapy sessions to cope with the relentless demands of her schedule. Marcus, her partner, remained a steady pillar of support, gently reminding her to set aside time for vacations or even simple at-home dinners. Their relationship deepened, tempered by the fire of adversity. One evening, they relaxed on their couch, a rare pause in Cassandra's manic routine. She sipped a glass of wine while Marcus flipped through TV channels. They paused at a local news segment, recapping her story, how she had soared from a humiliating first-class ticket dispute to acquiring the very airline that tried to push her aside. Marcus turned to her, a smile tugging at his lips. "You realize you're a walking movie script, right?" Cassandra chuckled. "If I wrote it all down, people might think it's too far-fetched." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I just hope I'm doing enough to justify the faith so many people have in me." Sometimes I lie awake wondering if the changes I've made will stick once the media buzz dies down. Marcus squeezed her hand. You've changed the culture from the top down. Even if you stepped aside tomorrow, the new policies, the training programs, the scholarship initiatives, they're embedded in the airline's DNA now. That's not going anywhere. She exhaled, letting warmth flood through her. It was a legacy she could be proud of. As the airline continued to thrive, stories abounded of employees who felt newly supported, passengers who praised the improved cabin experiences, and communities enriched by philanthropic programs. In her speeches, Cassandra frequently recounted her origin story to emphasize how a single moment of discrimination could become a catalyst for transformative action. She would say, "If someone tells you first class isn't for you, remember that it's just their opinion, one you can choose to defy." Sometimes our greatest breakthroughs come from the times we've felt most dismissed. And indeed, her story inspired countless entrepreneurs, especially women of color, who saw in her a tangible example of smashing barriers in an industry previously assumed off-limits. Colleges invited her to speak at commencement ceremonies. Business schools used her takeover as a case study on bold, ethical leadership. Yet Cassandra always gave credit to the network of mentors, supporters, and staff who propelled her forward, recognizing that no success is ever truly a solo act. She remained accessible, answering emails from aspiring dreamers whenever time allowed, encouraging them to chase the seats they'd been told they couldn't occupy. In the end, the transformation at American Airlines was more than a corporate turnaround. It was a statement on how the spark of indignation can ignite a sweeping blaze of progress. Cassandra had taken what was supposed to be a humiliating defeat, being bumped out of first class, and turned it into a reason to restructure an entire airline. No one who met her could forget how calm and resolute she seemed, whether she was clinching billion-dollar deals or shaking hands with ground staff at the tarmac. The memory of that gate agent's dismissive words stayed with her, not as a wound, but as a reminder of how easily people can dismiss each other based on appearances. Ironically, the agent's lack of courtesy had galvanized Cassandra's greatest calling. She had stopped accepting narrow limitations and decided to expand the boundaries for everyone. It was a new dawn in the skies, and Cassandra Dupree soared at the forefront, living proof that when we push back against prejudice and claim our rightful seats, we can transform not just our own destinies, but entire institutions. Progress isn't always born from grand plans. It often finds its roots in small, stinging moments that spark a determination to upend the status quo. When one woman was told, "First class isn't for you," she chose to claim far more than a single seat. She changed an entire airline, empowering employees and uplifting the passengers who'd once been overlooked. Her journey shows us that each challenge can become an opportunity for radical reinvention if we dare to believe in our capacity for impact. If this story resonated with you, if it stirred you to stand up and reshape what others say, you can't then do more than just carry this inspiration silently. Share and subscribe to this channel. By spreading stories of bold ambition and unshakable resolve, you help forge a space where new ideas can flourish. Let's keep climbing together, first class and beyond.